of the Interviews from the Top. My name is Kirkland Tibbles, and I am the co-founder and chairman of Influence Ecology. I am here with John Patterson. Say hi, John. Make sure your
Hello,
sound works.
everybody. Good evening.
John Patterson, co-founder, CEO. Yeah, John, sounds great. Is also here with us. We are facilitating tonight a panel of some of our most ambitious and successful students in many different ways in their own transactions out there across a broad range of conditions of life, and it's just a pleasure to have those of you with us. I'm noticing, John, there's a whole bunch of people piling in right now. So really just grateful to have you here and have this opportunity. We've got about 165 plus folks registered for the call tonight from lots of different places around the world. John, I didn't look at the schedule. Last time we had 7 countries represented. I don't know what tonight represents, but that's probably in the same vein. And as always, we're going to run through some of our typical slides, setting up the orientation, the environment for tonight, and we always begin with our theme of the year, 2015, and that is the theme of work, which is a condition of life, a fundamental and biological condition of life, the activity of life, what you do, what you are doing with your body, the activity of your survival, your enjoyment in this environment, the social environments, the physical environments, natural environments in which we habitate. And so you will hear a lot tonight about this condition just in the speaking of activity. So with that, we will move into some of our housekeeping. As always, we ask you not to record these sessions in any way. Please don't do any recording of any kind, any screen sharing, displays, that sort of thing in public, or if you're some of you folks know how to screen capture, and there's some new technologies that allow you to do that sort of thing. We ask you not to duplicate or record any of this for any reason. We also ask you to be mindful of what you share if the opportunity does come up to speak tonight. However, we are asking folks who have questions to do that in the chat box. John's gonna tell you how to do that in just a minute. We also want to make sure that you are respectful of the content that's being shared with you tonight, both from Influence Ecology's proprietary materials, but also in any candid responses that we get from our panelists tonight. They are generously giving us their time and their specialized knowledge and their experience, and so we ask you to respect that. And what you hear here is for you and your purposes in your continued development, and we just ask that you be mindful of their generosity and not be writing or blogging about Influence Ecology or the panelists or your opinions on any social media or any interviews and so forth. We have a very specific social media policy and strategy, and we ask you to adhere to that and help us with that, help us utilize that broadcast medium of social media, and that includes LinkedIn, Facebook, and all of those things. And we remind you what Warren Buffett said: if you wouldn't put it on the front page of your local paper, you wouldn't want to put it on your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page. And so we respect that practice. We ask you to also acknowledge that. And also, some of you may have the opportunity here, folks, that you recognize. And with all of our programs and live events, we have a no solicitation policy. However, if you hear an offer that you are interested in and want to know more, you are more than welcome to approach folks about their offer. Let's see. So we are moving to any communication tonight. You can reach us through our website, either the Contact Us piece on the website, or if you are a participant or member in the ecology, you know that you can reach us through your dashboard.
Good.
We're going to talk.
Kirkland, let me go ahead and before we get into some of the other items for people that will have questions tonight, we're going to invite you tonight to ask your questions through the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. So on the control panel, you see an area that says questions, and it's a place for you to chat your questions to us. and then we'll be able to see those questions and read those questions to our panel. So you can begin to do that now or a little bit later. You don't have to wait for us to say, okay, now if you have questions, you're welcome to do that at any time throughout the session. All right, Kirkland.
Fantastic. And again, contact us through the website. If you have any other comments or questions that don't get answered, feel free to be in communication with us. We will attempt to get back with you. I want to remind all of you that our 2016 annual member conference in Ojai is filling up. We have had quite a run after the two conferences over the last few weeks. Quite a bit of new folks coming into the ecology, so we're anticipating a rather our largest conference to date. That's pretty much assured at this point in beautiful Ojai, California. If you want to know more about that, please do join us, and you can call us at the office to find out more about what goes on at these conferences. As you notice a little bit, there's Joe McNerney on the far upper right-hand side. Joe McNerney is one of our panelists tonight, and this is some pictures from conference. And then also our mid-year conferences, we just wrapped those up. We did this year's U.S. mid-year conference was in Chicago. Next year, it's here in beautiful Los Angeles, California. We are set and ready to go. I've already started to work on notes from this mid-year, and we're underway. Plans are already underway to take advantage of our local environment. You will not want to miss Los Angeles mid-year if you're in the U.S. I understand there's a few people already planning to come in from Australia, New Zealand. So we welcome you to LA, and then a couple weeks after that, we'll all be back in Auckland. And right now, I am scheduled to go over there and lead that. Thrilled about it. John's been over there doing that several times, and it's definitely my turn. And I cannot wait for Auckland next year for our mid-year at the Pullman. We've got some other things just to keep you abreast of what's going on. Our next open focus lecture training series, where we will allow guests to attend. So for those of you who know that you want to bring guests into these focus lecture training series, the next one is entitled Women Transacting Powerfully. It'll be August 24th. And John, I think you said that you put a link in the chat box. Is that right?
Yes, we did. We're about to. We're going to be putting the link in for that next session, so everybody should be able to see it.
And if you have any issues or questions about how to get registered for that, if you cannot find your way on our website and have a question about that, simply go to our website, hit Contact Us for a request to get registered for that one. I can tell you right now that we have already got confirmed panelist on that, and you do not want to miss this. The focus is transacting as and with women in the marketplace. Always a topic, John, that in our live events that always tends to surprise people at the distinctions and differentiations in the way that transacting around gender matters, especially in the current social construct with all the sensitivity around gender. Does that matter at all as you move in the marketplace? That's a reasonable question to ask. Does it matter to you as a woman? Does it matter to you as a man? What happens to moods, attitudes, states of minds? What about personalities? What about have you noticed, Joe and I are getting on up there in age. Do we have a different ethic or set of standards around transacting, just gender and so forth? There's so many great things to cover, and so much good stuff comes out of this topic that we decided to go ahead and just, John, we're gonna just go head first right in the middle of this sometimes controversial issue. And it is I know who's going to be on the panel so far, and I'm going to tell you something, you don't want to miss it if you can be on that call. Our next Fundamentals of Transaction program starts October 13th. This is FOT 41. Our 41st FOT gets started in October. Our next Priority in Practice, September 23rd. And then, of course, as always, if you're in the monthly membership program or Mechanics of Practice programs, that we have monthly sessions. We are now locking dates. As most of you know, Drew Knowles, our Vice President, will be in Melbourne, Gold Coast, Singapore, and Perth to find out more about how to invite folks to these events for the fantastic and always my vice president who is running the show, man. Drew Knowles does a great job with open training sessions. If you want to see how to transact powerfully in the invitation and presentation side of things, man, get in a room with Drew. And then we are also now ready to announce our North American open training sessions. We are working on dates for Los Angeles. We have Chicago, October 6th, Denver the 15th, Dallas we will be on October 13th, and we will be doing 2 days in Charlottesville. We'll be doing a PIP event, focused event at the University of Virginia, October 8th, and then I'll be doing an off grounds. We don't use the campus word when we're on UVA. Just FYI, I want to get extra credit for my UVA folks. We off grounds in Charlotte on Friday, October 9th for a Fundamentals of Transaction event, and we look forward to having you there if you can make it. If you've not been to Charlottesville, man, that's a trip to take. It's absolutely stunning. I am so looking forward to getting back there to lead sessions there. So that gives you a sense of what's going on in the ecology, in influence ecology worldwide. We are moving to make more and more programs, live and virtual sessions available to you, and we are simply thrilled to have you. And as always, we want to thank you for your referrals. Thank you for having folks with us. And again, we so appreciate those of you who send your friends, family, vendors, employees, bosses to these events. And as always, we promise to take really good care of them, even if that means we've got to give them a look every now and then. Isn't that right, John? Okay, tonight I am thrilled to introduce 4 panelists who come from very distinct sides of the ownership of offers, ownerships of enterprises, professional offers in the marketplace, and I'm just thrilled also to hear myself, having been transacting with these folks for the last months and years. We have with us tonight Joe McNerney, who is in Illinois. Luisa De Silva is in Florida. Michael Dunn is in New Zealand, and Paul Delano is in Michigan. And tonight's topic is going to be essentially folks who are in enterprise ownership or have professional offers in the marketplace. How have you been transacting in the marketplace? How does it work for you to utilize and take advantage of a transactional approach to making offers in the marketplace, dealing with employees in the marketplace, vendor relationships? How's your problem solving? How are you utilizing personality, transactional behavior? We have a couple of questions that I'll just let you know kind of the framework of some of the questions that have already come in. One of the questions that got asked a couple times is, it would just be great if our panelists would speak to exactly how you are on the ground objectively utilizing what you've learned. What weapons are you using? Where do you use them? How do you use them? And give us some real world examples as our panelists tonight. And I'd like to start with Paul Delano. And Paul, I'm going to just welcome to the call. It's so great to have you there. Why don't you give a little introduction? Tell us what you do and where you are, and how long have you been studying with us?
Great, thank you, Kirkland. So I'm located in Southwest Michigan, just north of Notre Dame, Indiana, and I own a real estate brokerage firm and specialize in inland lake properties in Southwest Michigan. I started with FOT 24 back in 2013, and that was also the first year that I opened up my my real estate company, and definitely struggled to and had my butt kicked plenty of times to stay on the course and get my work done. And what I took out of FOT was the importance of specializing in focus and how to apply the weapons of influence throughout every single transaction.
Paul, when you say specialization and focus, can you tell us what that means and how you did that?
So when I started my company, which was at the same time of FOT, what I started with was that I was going to sell lake property and vacant land. And primarily I focused on lake property, but I focusing on just that segment of the market rather than commercial property, residential subdivisions. I honed in on marketing to lake property buyers and sellers, and without the distraction of the other parts of the business. And as a result, the first year in business took a 10% market share amongst 250 other agents. I would also say with regards to specialization that, first I was the Michigan Lakes and Land, then I became the waterfront specialist, and now it's down to I continue to specialize that now I only focus on inland lakes, not rivers, not streams, not Lake Michigan, but I continue to specialize as this has evolved since 2013.
Kirkland, I'm just going to check and see if we lost
Still there,
your
Kirkland?
sound.
Yeah, Paul, is that back?
Now you're
No,
back.
I got you now.
Okay, good. Thank you. I remember a conversation, Paul, early on, where we were talking about specializing, and you had said something like, "Now you don't mean not taking other business that walks in the door, but just as in the stuff that we're doing in the marketplace." And you and I had a conversation, so I'll do it like this. If someone comes in a local city or town and wants you to list a piece of property, would you list it?
Not today.
And so that's what I think a lot of people may have to maybe scratching their head over. So you walk away from business today like that?
Without a question. And in declining an offer to do business, the next step that I take is I point them in the direction of another agent, often my peer, that can actually do that piece of business, and I get paid as a result of it. And through that transaction, what I'm demonstrating to the client is my authority and my specialization, but also to my peer. And I've found that I've actually, when I decline business, often have people say, "You've got to be kidding me. I've never met a real estate agent that would turn away business."
It is hard sometimes for people, especially people who aren't deeply familiar with this whole notion of highly specialized offers in the marketplace, Paul. And I mean, we've had plenty of dialogue about this. What would you tell someone who is still struggling with that concept?
What I would tell someone is, as long as they have developed the general and specialized knowledge and have set their focus, you cannot start specializing soon enough. And the quickest way to have authority in your offer is to decline an invitation that's outside of that specialization and make sure that that person is still well taken care of, and refer them to the appropriate person that can handle them.
That's fantastic. Well, Paul, I'm going to come back to you. Thank you so much for that. Louisa, anything you want to add to this notion of specialization in terms of what you're doing? And by the way, please introduce yourself. Where are you? Give us a little bit of history of when you started with us.
Sure. So I'm Louisa. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm in the janitorial and cleaning service industry. I started with FOT in 2013, and I also have a very kind of specialized offer now. We do cleaning for residential people, homes, and we clean for not only in the green side, but allergy reduction and really specializing in dusting. And there's a whole world there in that. And that's when I actually met with you, Kirkland, last year, I think in May. And I used to do everything, vacation property, commercial, residential, any type of residential. And when I started scaling back, we actually got more and more focused. And we're doing white papers now, building authority, consistency with our brand, and just really talking about allergy reduction. And over 90% of our clients now, the new clients, do have allergies, and they pay a premium for it. And it's been working.
And so this whole green and allergy related specialized offer is continuing to be where you're going to be focusing, is that right?
Absolutely, but not only green, but literally cleaning for people who suffer from indoor allergies.
That's I love that you're headed in that direction. That's fantastic. What are you finding in the marketplace now in terms of people's responses to your specializing? I mean, I know you probably still hear from folks that are in commercial and some other offers you used to make. Yeah, do you have a tough time turning that business down?
Yeah, actually, we do, but I do the same thing that the other. I'm sorry, I completely spaced out
Paul?
on your name. Paul, yes,
Yeah.
Talked about. I just refer them to people who I've worked with for over 5 years who really take care of our clients, and I just say, I'm so sorry, we can't service you, but they know to take care of the people that we have.
Is it hard for you to turn that business down?
Of course, it's money.
Okay, good. Well, listen. It will get easier and easier. Just trust us. It gets a lot easier when, and it will keep going. You're going to have to learn how to decline business all the time. The more special and focused you get, the more offers you're going to be getting from all kinds of folks who really do not understand and the importance of highly specialized offers in the marketplace. Louisa, what would you tell someone who has and for the most part, you're in an industry that would be considered a fairly general offer in the marketplace. There's a lot of it. In other words, there's a lot of it in the market. Competition's probably pretty good, especially in Florida for your industry. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
What would you say the difference is now? You've started moving and doing well. What's the difference that this study is made, and what would you tell someone who has a relatively general offer in a highly competitive marketplace and industry? What would you tell them about the difference that it's made in this study?
I would say definitely specialize. It's not only gone for my brand and what people buy into or what they're comfortable with paying, but also our staff. And before having multiple offers and multiple ways of doing cleaning, right? Because you can do cleaning a million ways. Having a cleaning with 2 possible packages, very simple. It's been our ratings online with our marketplace kind of ads and reviews have gone through the roof. All of our directories, we have 5+ star reviews, and our cost of doing business has gone down, a lot by that, and just the general way of doing business. And then just getting in touch with the personalities and who you're working with, and putting the right people at the right place, and making sure they know exactly what their role is in the whole transaction cycle.
Here's a question that about that. When you are shifting into more focused offers, do you? I think this is cold. I think it's a cold turkey question, Louisa. Do you phase out your old offers, or do you go cold turkey?
I went cold turkey and I phased them out. So the commercial, I completely went cold turkey. It was costing us more just in personnel and operations to keep it going without specializing in that area. And then the other one with the vacation properties, we just phased out because there were clients that we wanted to keep kind of a relationship with. And so we went down from very large segment of our business to only having 1 or 2 clients in that area. That can produce more business for us on the other side, though. The realtors and different people that we know that we need to work with going,
of course. So, and by cold turkey, did you just complete your transactions with your commercial side?
Yes.
You just said, look, we're here we go. This is notice, basically.
Yeah. So basically, I had a conversation with them about what it was costing our business, and that we couldn't, even though we couldn't keep it going as it was, we gave them 90 days, which is very generous in our business. It's usually 30 to 60. And then I gave them 3 other people that I've worked with in the past, 3 different vendors or cleaning services, and they chose one of them. And I know that 1 or 2 are very happy and still kept our referral.
That's fantastic. All right, Louisa, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I want to go to Michael Dunn. Michael, welcome to the call. Why don't you give us a little brief introduction and how long you've been studying with us? Tell us what you do and so forth.
Hello. Yes, my name's Michael Dunn. I live in Wellington in New Zealand when I'm based in my home base. I first studied with influence ecology last year. I was in FOT 33, which began, I think, in May. At the time, I had just finished, I'd been working with an organisation called the New Zealand Institute for Economic Research, and one of the challenges I had there was the ability to market my services. My connections were not as good as they could have been, and I went out on my own, set up a business. Well, I had this business already, Economic and Fiscal Consulting Limited, and I had to learn to work through other people to find clients, and I did that and successfully carried on business here for a few months last year. But what I then chose to go back to is the fact that I do this internationally. I offer my specialist role as a team leader for essentially aid-funded projects, although there can be directly government-funded projects in other countries, and I provide advice in government finance and economics. So I'll go into a country, I'll help them develop their tax system, I'll help them develop their budgeting system, I'll work with their parliaments on the oversight of public finances, and I also have a long experience in analytical side of things. I can produce analytical models and forecasts of economic forecasts and budget forecasts. So it's a specialist range of skills, and what I've found that is that I have the ability now to be very effective as a team leader in the field. The skills I've learned through influence ecology and transacting, where I have to deal with the clients of record, which are usually international aid agencies, USAID, United States Agency for International Development, or the UK equivalent, which is the Department for International Development, or indeed the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank, the types of clients that fund these operations. And that's usually, to win the business, you have to put together a compelling and cost-effective bid with a great team of experts. So I get involved in the preparation of the bids, working with international firms because I don't have all the resources myself to do that, and then I lead the teams in the field. And
Michael,
yeah.
So what has what you've learned in terms of transactional competence? How are you applying? Because given the broad reach and the level of organization that you deal with, I would love to hear from you what's made the biggest difference in this particular study.
Last year we had an issue that came up, for instance, about trust, and we were studying trust. And what came up and became very apparent in leading the project that I was then engaged with was that there was a breakdown of trust among the parties, the client that we were working for, the government in the country, and the firm that I was representing, and to some extent with the consultant team in the country. And I had to work using that technology to develop better understanding and help rebuild trust amongst all those parties so that we could continue forward. So that was something I got, and I would not have had that without this education and knowledge.
Fantastic, so Michael. I'm gonna come back. There may be some more. There may be some questions about the practical application. What was the objective procedure? Like, how did you go about doing that in the utilization? I'm guessing it has to do with the narratives, the cycle, but I'll come back. I want to introduce Joe McNerney, someone I've known for quite a while. Joe, welcome to the call. How long have you been studying with us, and give us a little intro.
Thank you, Kirkland. I have been with Influence Ecology a little over 2 years. I'm a lawyer. I practice in the greater Chicagoland area. I've been a lawyer for 35 years. I worked as a prosecutor early in my career for the government, and I've worked for a large law firm. I've worked in private businesses. I've run my own practice, and I've taught at one of the local law schools here in town. So the initial comment I want to say is relative to focus. Because right now what I do is I run my own practice, and just listening to Paul and Louisa talk a little bit about how difficult it is to turn business away, unless, of course, you can do what Paul does, which is point the person at another professional who does that business and collect a referral fee. It's just, I've always found it very tough to turn away business, and I can tell you that Influence Ecology, with its focus on having me identify my chief aims and repeatedly look at what is it that would fulfill those aims. Is it really taking on high-cost, low-value clients, or am I better off declining those cases and working with high-value, low-cost clients who I have great value to provide for them and enjoy providing it? It's just been an eye-opener every step of the way.
Michael, I mean, Joe, we were talking about personality not too long ago, and the difference that the study that we do around personality and transactional behaviors made in what difference has that made in how you go about your day-to-day activity and your work and other areas of your life?
Well, the impact it made, I think the example I gave when we talked was relative to, I think it was at a conference the year before last. We got deeply into the different personalities and started to have folks identify themselves, what their primary personality is, and get a real sense of what, for instance, a performer is, what makes a performer tick, what are their interests, and how do they show up when it comes to my business. And the thing that I always found fault with, my primary personality is judge, so I'm very analytical. I'm always judging and evaluating situations, cases, people, and I found performers, many of whom tended to be salespeople or in the marketing arena, to be disorienting. They showed up late for appointments. If they attended appointments, they seemed always more interested in doing what's fun rather than keeping appointments and following through. And getting just that little bit about that performers tend to be focused on freedom and fun really gave me a way to kind of interact with them, a way to work with them more powerfully. In many ways, I'd kind of cut them some slack because, after all, they're performers or salespeople. So they're always buying drinks and entertaining and telling jokes. And it really allowed me to work much better with that kind of personality.
And since Will Watson's not on the call, we're free to pick on him without worry. Will was one of the ones that really got your attention at annual member conference, huh?
He really did, particularly because I think he's an extreme example of a performer. And also, because he's also very good at what he does. If you can get past some of the idiosyncrasies.
And as a judge, Joe, your assessment is pretty quick when you see, or before this study, you would see a personality like that, and I know you have a couple close ones, very close in your life. You just simply didn't take them seriously. Is that correct?
That's correct. And sometimes I wouldn't do business with them. And now I've got some tools for working much more effectively with them. In fact, I'm much less likely to cut them out and much more interested. For instance, it's great because one of the things I really am not good at, I have a great reputation in the legal community in the Chicago area, and I have no interest and no skill at selling myself. I can sell a client to a jury, I can sell a point of view, I can be persuasive, but I never had any real interest in selling myself for business. I just wanted people to show up at the door. And I can now work with a sales professional. In fact, I get any number of people that I recognize are performers, and they refer me business like crazy. Some in a professional capacity, and some just because that's the way they operate.
Fantastic. And for in terms of your client, the client work you do, how are you applying the same study of personality as you begin to work with clients now more and more?
I am, and I find it more complicated to, it's so easy in the ecology to identify personalities. People tend to help you out. I find it much more difficult in business to, especially if it's a relatively short-term relationship, to identify, the primary personality. I just find it harder on the court.
It is. It actually is, because the benefit we have in our particular environment, in the ecology of all of the participants in live events and on these webinars, is that we have a chance to sort of vet that to some degree inside some common language. You get out in the marketplace and people are in many different discourses. It's almost like in many ways they speak another kind of language, the language of the current marketplace. And it takes a lot of practice, a tremendous amount of practice. Louisa, you've been doing some good work around personality. How do you use what you've learned in personality and transactional behavior in terms of your employees? How does it come into effect when you're talking with vendors internally? How's it helped?
Well, I tend to just feel people out in the very beginning and let them talk their way, into whatever conversation. And then I hear what they're saying in distinct things, like I do something, we do something. With producers, I'm very short, and just my speaking is very limited, and with kind of commands with my employees directly. And I tell them why we're doing something and the background of it and how it's going to impact them in their work every day. But very succinctly, I used to be a lot more wordy about it. With judges, I had to kind of retrain myself not to be kind of almost condescending of it. Before, I have a lot of clients who just happen to be judges, and the minute that I don't know what it is, but they use their body a certain way when they start to kind of interrogate, and instead of like going at them, I kind of back away and I let them talk about it a little bit more and just give them proofs and facts about why this is this way or another. I used to get a lot more confronted with it, kind of like they were almost like trying to, beat me off, and they're not. They're just looking for why they should choose us versus somebody else.
And what personality do you identify with?
I'm an inventor, but I'm an inventor kind of performer. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got it. You're a pretty. Would you say you're an extrovert?
No, I'm an introvert, but I do have extrovert qualities, but they cost me a little bit.
Well, right, you know how to turn it on, right, when you need to, right?
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear more about in dealing with your employees. How does personality, and how do you go about in your day-to-day work? Are you approaching personality in any particular way around your employment?
Absolutely. So that's been in my office and out in the field. So we do have two sets of personnel, and it's been the biggest kind of transformation for my business, is really learning how to deal with people. Like, just to give an example, before 2013, I had a judge answer the phone, and she used to be our dispatch person, and she would get so frustrated, and clients would get frustrated the minute something happened where there was a breakdown in the field. Now I had her actually in 2014 over the FOT course, moved her into finances. She's a judge. She loves kind of the historical data and getting our money right. So she deals with our vendors and with our daily transactions, and she's perfect there. But I had her answering the phones. And in our cleaning service, stuff happens all the time. And so there was that just in the very beginning. And then with our staff, with our cleaning staff, I am very, they don't care about what kind of is going on in the office. They only really care about what's going on in the field. And I've actually had them think of our clients as their clients, and shifted the perspective with how they deal with them on a daily basis and how they can take care of them and how that impacts their pay. And we give bonuses now that are it's shorter term, like bi-weekly or monthly. We do kind of these little incentives for them just to show how their behavior is impacting in the field.
That's fantastic. Hey, Paul, what about personality in the marketplace in real estate? How's that working for you?
I would say with every, I'm constantly studying the personality characteristics and applying it with every client or customer that I run across. I'd say that in the past, as an inventor, the biggest challenge for me was dealing with a judge, and I've actually learned to embrace judges' assertions and learn from what they have to say during the transaction, and also realize that if I've got something to say to them, if it's an opinion, it doesn't mean anything if I can't back it up with facts. And then also in working with performers, I realized that very early on in the process, I need to move them to contract. That if I don't move them into contract immediately, there's no point in spending my time with them.
What personality do you identify with, Paul?
I identify with an inventor with some performer.
Yeah. Okay. And what about producers?
Producers, I've actually gained quite a bit of respect for producers, and I've realized they like the consistency, and I'm always working on it, but that they like to know what the schedule is and what the consistency is, and so in dealing with clients, as I approach them, I will lay out the process for them in much more detail than I would a performer, where I tell them what to do at the right moment in time that they need to do it.
That's fantastic. Hey, John, I've got a question that came in for you actually. You have John Patterson. You've been transacting now in New Zealand and Australia. We have customers now in 12 different countries. How have you noticed? Does personality stay consistent? Do you still notice that these 4 primary personality groups of characteristics, inventor, performer, producer, judge, is it staying fairly consistent across borders?
Absolutely. It's a human being thing. You got two hands, 2 legs, and a personality. So it seems to be consistent. What I have noticed is that wherever we go, cultures tend to sort of steer themselves or evolve in a way where culture seems to be a kind of inventory or performery and so forth. For example,
give me an example.
Yeah, sure. Los Angeles. We live near Los Angeles, entertainment capital of the world, and a bunch of people, trying to make it rich with, I'll say, limited talent.
Hey,
hey, not you, other people. But there's a lot of that here. There's a lot of it. And then you go to a place, say, like Denver. I think Denver, or even say Seattle, and there's some places around the world where there are a lot of people in the tech industry, or there's a lot of people who are inventing things, and the culture tends to be towards that particular focus. Get a little East Coast, gets a little judgy. So it just shows it's a little bit different from place to place. We're just in Auckland. Just in Auckland to finish up. And I think Drew had warned me, I think my first time over there, that it was a little bit on the judgy side or inventor side, a little bit more introvert than extrovert.
And we've talked how many times we've talked about the difference between like a Dallas and the work ethic that goes on in a place like Chicago. I mean, one of the things we always have to deal with in Chicago is very much a producer, get the job done, hard working, is a big work ethic, and in fact we have to confront in Chicago more than just about any other place the work schedule in the kinds of event, and we have to be more sensitive in terms of a work schedule than we do in Los Angeles, which we're just we have to apply every weapon in the world to get the highly inventor, mostly performer personalities in the Los Angeles market just to show up on time. Otherwise we'd be hanging out an hour waiting on Los Angeles events to start. And again, these are highly general, but but we notice it. Michael, I don't know. You haven't studied with us as long as the rest. Are you experienced enough with personality and transactional behavior to notice this across borders as much?
Yeah, I'm up to a point, because I've worked in places like former Soviet countries where it's more judge, very much what you can only do things which you're permitted to do. If it's not explicitly permitted, then it's prohibited, and a very legalistic approach to the way they do things. And I just take that as being a reflection of a judge type environment. A little bit freer in the Middle East, but it does depend where you are. But we've got of course, the religious aspect. I've worked in different parts of the Middle East, but most notably in Iraq for a number of years. And then there's the bit of the clash of sometimes when you get a group of foreigners into that environment and they don't quite understand the prevailing climate, that's when you can get tensions and misunderstandings.
That's exactly right. That's what we find.
Tell me, Michael, a little bit about.
I was just going to say that's what we find. That's just what we find when we go in and lead in a particular area, that we have to be responsible for the sort of the personality / culture of an area. That's it. Kirkland, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a sort of we talk about this thing called the current, and for our guests, we've named this thing that sort of catches culture and all of us, this overarching predominant narrative in any discourse. Where one attempts to transact. We've named that phenomenon, that narrative phenomenon, the current. And for the most part, we're all caught in different narrative currents. And we've noticed that there are cultures, as we have continued to transact around the world, that are more trusting. There are cultures that are very skeptical, and we've begun to notice that as we move around, either state by state or country by country, that there are pockets of narratives that tend to exist, which goes back to sort of this underlying principle that that personality can be identified around the transaction cycle. I'll go back to Louisa. Louisa, anything before we move on to a different topic? Anything else you want to add about personality and transactional behavior?
Just that they make up your business, and be very careful about who you put and where, and that they know exactly what their function is. You need to have everyone, and it does get much easier once you have the people and they have their distinct roles and responsibilities, and they know where theirs end and somebody else's begin and can get out of the way. That's the training I've done in my business, is really getting people to know where they should be and where they shouldn't be, and taking myself out of it too. I can create a lot of fires and a lot of different things in the daily goings-on of the business, and so I've taken myself completely out of the daily work and just focused on inventing and systemizing and bringing that rigor into the other side, which nobody likes to do either. But I love.
That's fantastic. I want to move into weapons. Paul Delano, you've already said 3 different weapons. You said authority and consistency, and I love the work that you've done around weapons of influence. But I would love to hear some on the ground specific examples of exactly what you are doing in the use, and how you've designed and why you designed a weapon to be applied in a specific place. Would you be willing to do some of that with us?
Absolutely. A couple of examples of applying the weapons of influence. At the point that I sign a contract with someone to list their property, or for me to represent them as a buyer's agent, that's the point at which I ask for referrals. And people are going to refer you to other people like themselves, and that's a very quick way to tap into the broader ecology. And that's also the highest point of buy-in that you're going to have with an individual, is at the point that they sign a contract, even though you've not delivered at that point.
How do you produce authority in your offer?
I'm not sure how I don't produce this authority. How I produce authority in my offer is one is to set the terms and conditions under which I'm going to work for a client. The other is very specifically, if I'm working with a buyer, I will tell them that you must use one of these three bankers, and if you don't, I will refer you to another agent, or I'll just give you their card to do business with, because I'm about producing high-value, low-cost transactions, and I refuse to work with business partners that or non-partners that are not going to make your experience of buying a lake home what it should be.
Hang on a second. Let me make sure I get this straight. So you said that when you're doing business with your customers, if they walk in the door with their own banker, you would still do that?
I will not do that.
You won't do business with a customer who's not going to do business with your bankers?
Correct.
Wow.
It's too high cost of a transaction for me to have to train and develop someone with whom I don't have a relationship with.
How is that received when you make that authoritative move?
Well, generally when people understand that I may be willing to walk away from, $15,000 to $30,000 in revenue, they take it very, very seriously, and they comply.
Wow, that's authority.
And if they don't, I have one instance where they wouldn't comply, and I sent them to somebody else because, quite frankly, I'd rather my competition was tied up being busy with someone who's high cost and low value.
That's one of my favorite tactics. I love that. That's fantastic. What about social proof? How are you using social proof?
So with social proof, one of the things that I realized in the Build and Expand Your Influence ecologies, I thought that meant only higher ecologies. And so I make a point of referring to the waitress at the local burger place, the dock guy, the banker, the termite inspector, actually anybody involved in the transaction. And as part of that social proof, these are people I send so much business to that when the topic comes up of selling a lake home, they say, you must use this guy. And then in addition, I make a point of getting referral letters from my clients, and where appropriate. In fact, I just landed a listing through a trust department, and I had a letter written from the president of the title company, who's an attorney, and I had him write a letter that said, basically, I've worked with 600 realtors. This is the best one that I've ever worked with, and he sold my house. And I handed it to the trust department. They read it, and they said, wow. I said, now you need to give me that letter back, because he does business in this industry, and it's too expensive for him to have this out in public, but I'm glad to share it with you.
Well, that's fantastic. Hey, Paul, give us a little rundown on how you've done in business, if you don't mind. I know it's a little bit to ask with 110, 15 people on the call, something like that. How have you done since you started applying all this?
Well, the first year out the gate, as I said, I had a 10% market share amongst 250 agents in waterfront property. That was in 2013, I believe. And this year, after being prodded to build my enterprise, I hired a buyer's agent, and right now we're at 20% market share amongst 250 realtors. And that's the difference that it makes to specialize and focus, as well as use the weapons of influence and all the other tools.
So how many houses are you listing roughly a week now?
Oh, I don't. I've been clipping along at about 10 per month, and we're actually, well, we finished up July. We finished up July at the same production that I ended last year at.
Okay, it's really good.
And I would say that when I started the first year, I was showing anywhere from 20 to 40 homes a week, and now I'm showing 2 to 3 homes per week. So I'm because I'm focusing on listings, my compensation is up, and the amount of time I'm spending out on the road is significantly down.
That's great. Well, I know you have a kind of a ridiculous work ethic anyway. We're all looking forward to you working less, though, Paul.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna get you there one way or the other. I know you're just making hay right now, but I'm gonna get you to slow down a little bit.
Sounds good.
All right, good. I want to go, Joe McNerney. How are you doing with the use of weapons? Are you practicing and applying the use of weapons in your offers now?
I am, and I'll tell you honestly, for a substantial period of time, I didn't know until we got into this. I think probably in priority and practice, I didn't even know that I was doing it. And then, as we start working through the weapons, I've started using them intentionally. I mean, authority has always been kind of one of my things, being a judge. What's important to me is evidence and what's happened in the past and someone's track record. So that's something that's always been automatic for me when I'm speaking with a client. I tell them a little bit about myself and what I've done, what I've accomplished, and that kind of sets the stage. And of course, to the extent that I can engage some of the other weapons, like turning away business and having a sense of that they're not going to be able to find another lawyer like me too easily, that kind of thing. So that's what I have to say in that regard.
It's difficult sometimes for judges to sing their own praises in any substantial way. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I'd much rather have others, speak on my behalf.
And learning how to demonstrate your authority, talking about your social proof, and at the same time building some liking. Those weapons tend to be the ones that are without a lot of grounding in evidence. Those weapons tend to give judges the toughest time, I think. Any advice to judges listening in on how to move forward?
I don't know if the judges need my advice or something. There's certain strengths we have. If I had advice, it would be look at your weaknesses and engage people that are good at that. I'm not good at accounting. I'm not good at some of the detail, and very often I struggle through and suffer through a lot of that work when the simple solution is to bring another person in to handle that, and it frees me up to do what I'm good at.
It's great, John. I'm going to save some time for some questions here. I want to open it up also. I think we'll do another round for the panelists to sort of give their, if there's one thing a guest who's listening in tonight or someone who's just gotten started with us in the new program ought to know. I'd love for the panelists here in a bit to say, listen, this is one thing you got to know, or here's a piece of advice for you new folks. John, I think we have a few questions, yeah?
We do. Excuse me. I think Tim Nicholas asks a question. He says, are you spending less time working now? And did you face a point in time where you had to let go of your belief that you have to work harder to do better?
Panelist?
Yeah, I'll go. This is Louisa.
Great.
I don't think I work less per hour. I'm actually starting to track that in my computer because I want to get the reality of it. But I definitely do more work that I enjoy. I used to, a couple of years ago, when I first started FOT, work a lot harder and physically laboring in the company. I put in people to do the daily work. But now I kind of feel like I'm living the 4-hour work week lifestyle, even though I'm not. I just spend a lot more time doing things that I want to do so they don't feel like labor. And I also have other conditions of life at play where my sociality is in there on a daily basis, my physical fitness, and different things to keep my spirits going. So nothing feels like an overburdening labor at this point. And I work a lot more from home when I only go into the office a couple hours a week because I don't need to be there, and I shouldn't really be there a whole lot.
That's
as an adventure.
It's great. Well, we heard a little bit about Paul's work schedule. Michael, how are you doing in terms of your work? And I think, John, there was another tag on that question too.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly about work ethic. You know, did you let go of your belief that you have to work harder to do better?
My situation, I think, is that I'm still learning to work smarter and not work harder. When I'm working actually in the field on a project, I work my ass off to make sure we're going to deliver. But you know, talking about using the weapons, we have to produce an inception report early in the project. I always try and get all of the consultants to contribute to that. That's commitment and consistency. They say what they're going to do and when they're going to do it, and then I hold them to it. It tends to work if they're producers, but my God, if I've got an inventor in the team, they find all kinds of reasons why they shouldn't deliver. And they don't.
Heaven forbid, right?
Absolutely. And then I've got a client who's the judgiest judge you could imagine. Oh my God, you know, he's so difficult to satisfy. And yeah.
It's useful in the field to have this personality work, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is really making a difference. And of course, having the firm that's running, you know, managing the contract, the president's an out-and-out performer, and he clowns around so much. The only way that they really got back on side with the client is when they sent their financial controller, who's a judge, of course, to talk to their judge and get things agreed between them as to how they were going to deal with the nuts and bolts.
That's great.
Great.
All right, Kirkland, I do want to say, I know that it's the top of the hour, and so some people I see have dropped off the call. And so we do ask, if you do leave at this time, to do offer feedback in the feedback that'll pop up here when this session is complete. However, we are going to stay on and take some more questions and hear some more things from our panel. I have a question. There seems to be a question about choosing the specialty. You know, how did you choose the specialty? What was your process in doing that? I'd love to hear from either Louisa or I think Paul, you spoke to your specialty, but either of those people, how did you choose that specialty?
I chose it by just analyzing where I could be most successful and where I could turn this thing out with my chief aims. There's a certain goal I need to meet in 10 years, and there's also some goals currently, and my current residential offer fit that best. And I do have other offers as an inventor. I couldn't let it go completely. So in a couple of years, I'll scale the other offers back into it, but under separate and distinct businesses. But for right now, I just chose what fit with my chief aims and then where I wanted to be in 5 and 10 years.
And Lucy, you mentioned your chief aims. So can you say a little bit about the process that Influence Ecology walked you through to clarify those aims?
Yeah. So I had no idea. I thought I did. I've always been this kind of ambitious, more sometimes analytical person, but just getting down to the nitty gritty, what do I want this part of my life to look like? What do I want my relationship, my sociality, my happiness overall within my life, how the experience of it is. It was really eye-opening for me that, number one, I never really put paper and pen together and actually wrote it out, but then to put time frames into it. Like now with my birthday months, like every time that the 25th comes around, it's my birthday day, I actually have lined up with my life expectancy, what month I'm in right now and how long I have to go. So there's this whole game around it, but really getting down to what do I want to do? What's the game? And the chief aims really put that into perspective. And it took me about a year to actually get organized around it and face up to what I wanted to do. And I had to make a lot of tough choices, to do it. And I'm now on the other side of it, and I'm thankful.
Great. Good. Anybody from the panel want to address either of those two things? Either how did you pick your specialty or anything about what Luis addressed about how you did the work to articulate your aims?
I'm glad to jump in here, Paul Delano. I chose it based upon the experience that I've had over the last 20 or 25 years, starting in mortgage financing, and then buying and selling lake properties, and then doing lakefront property development, and living on the lake. And for me, it was just a natural fit that all my experience had been in real estate, but I had already specialized in waterfront property development, so it was really just a natural path to take.
Great. All right, good. I do have another question for the panel. I know that you may work with others, and in working with others, how has what you've learned here helped you work with other people? Maybe the people underneath you, maybe the people above you, maybe, how's that helped? Anybody?
I could comment. I've shifted my view from trying to form a cooperative of like-minded people to bid for and manage projects to thinking, I actually need the diversity of skills and personality types that some of the established firms already have, and so I've formed strategic alliances with key people in firms that I have respect for, and I work with them, and I have them put the bids together, but I put a lot of contribution into the bids as well as into the leadership of the work in the field, and I specialize in team. I'm shifted also towards a focus on longer term projects rather than anything less than 6 months. So it's it's recognizing that we need we need performers to present, and we need judges to assess and measure. We need people who keep an eye on the delivery of results. And although I'm an inventor, I'm quite strong on managing production in the field. I prefer not to have to do it myself, but hey, when it's not done, I'm the one that's got to carry the can, and I'm the one that's got to deliver.
That's great. I have a question about other conditions of life. I'd love to hear from the panelists in what other areas or conditions of life has your study and work in influence ecology made an impact.
Go ahead, Louisa.
Hello, go ahead.
This is Joe McNerney. So I've taken on health, and this is just part of working in the various programs of influence ecology. And for me, it's health has often been like a New Year's resolution. It's good for about 2 or 3 weeks. And working with influence ecology, where I engage another person to support me in running or doing some weight training, makes a huge impact when I get to that 2 or 3 week point where I normally peter out and stop fulfilling on my promise. The other piece that's big, and most of the folks on the call, certainly those in the ecology that are good at or have applied a consequence which will make fulfilling on the promise foregone conclusion. Absolutely critical piece, and something I never really considered before influence ecology.
That's great. Louisa?
I was just going to say, from the 2 questions, I don't know if this is totally cheesy, but I feel like I became a better human being. I was really inventorish and really just judgy about people, and getting into the other people's personalities in their world and what they kind of relate as important. Not only as important, but for everybody, it's like life threatening or giving in some way or another. Like, that's all we deal with all the time. And knowing that going into a new relationship, or to reestablish some authority, or to even just have some fun, knowing where people are at and what they kind of see as valuable and play with them that way. It's giving me a lot more lightness and like freedom around just being with people. And then how I am living life differently, it's the same thing as Joe said, you know, really transacting. I'm now doing martial arts and mixed martial arts. I went to a social event this weekend. I'm going to another one in a couple of weeks where we're actually going to midway into Florida and just really having fun and involving people in my daily workouts. I'm doing 3 times the amount of working out I usually did before. I was just a runner. Now I'm doing all this other things with other people. And it's fun. Like I get to keep my agreements and not have it be, you know, work and deliberate practice and kind of, you know, like that.
That's great. I have a great question, and Paul, I'm gonna let you deal with this one. So I love this question. I gotta do a little digging and see where this comes from. This is great. So this question is, what is the toughest thing you've had to learn from this study? And where do you think you still need to focus? And Paul, I can't help it, dude. I got to go with you first.
I can think of a couple places it could come from. The toughest thing is the toughest thing is in taking the time to work on all my different chief aims.
Yeah.
And I'd say applying the deliberate practice and knowing that I have in my offer to my health, my family, and my other chief aims.
Okay, good. Okay, good. That's great. Louisa, toughest part of the study for you in study and practice so far, and where do you think you still have work to do?
The toughest part is having the chief aims and actually having that 6 month is the toughest and the greatest. Having the 6 month mark between annual and mid-year, where you have these kind of bookend events where you plan your life completely over again in a more efficient and, you know, better way. It's been, in the beginning, was a lot tougher, and now I'm getting more adept at just aligning it with my chief aims and keeping things going and getting more energy from these kinds of activities. But it did take something to consistently be able to say, I'm going to do X and then do it, and if I didn't do it, Y, and not get so heady about it or, you know, whatever. And then the toughest thing that I have to learn in the future is do more and more and more study and study better and spend longer, you know, times doing it. I had to, like you said, learn how to read again and comprehension and just keeping that one thread going over a period of time really did take some stretching.
When you started, were you confronted by that level of study, the kind of study that we were recommending?
Absolutely. I'm a 4.0 Dean's List kind of student, but I did it very, 4 o'clock in the morning before. I have kind of a really good memory, so I used to just take things down, study it, flashcards. That was my way of learning and passing, not learning, just passing things. In here, it's completely different. And just taking the time, setting the environment, my air conditioning, my music, my whatever it is, so that I could actually be engaged in the study. It was extremely, extremely difficult. And it took like hour by hour, just having a clock on my computer, and kind of running down the clock. That's how I got used to it. And just even that length of time, I had to get my body used to sitting that way and doing the work.
That's great. I want to take that question to Michael. Michael, you're someone with PhDs, and I mean, you are highly credentialed. How's the study for you?
Yeah, it's a very different kind of study. A lot of focus on understanding, and not only understanding, but then how am I going to put this into practice and reality in my life and in my business, and how can I actually make it, just part of the way I live, rather than some theoretical knowledge that, it's just parked with everything else. Because the objective is to be a walking, not total demonstration, but and not monodimensional, but to incorporate all of the richness of this, these distinctions into how I operate. So, and it's strange and alien at first, just getting my head around the personality characteristics or the moves of the transaction cycle and trying to identify and see how these work in reality. It was a struggle for me at first.
What's the toughest thing for you to deal with in the study?
Or sometimes it's the fact that when I sit down and do it, I find that my ideas and the way I'm thinking about things are being radically challenged, and it's almost as though I have to reinvent my life or parts of my life week to week, month to month, and you know, it's a bit confrontational there.
Yeah, would it be? I don't want to embarrass you at all, and I know that you and I haven't had the same level of relationship and permission, but I understand you had a little bit of a moment at conference, yeah?
Oh, one or two. Yeah, I had a really interesting learning experience in leading a team and not really assessing risks properly. But in fact, reflecting on it, basically there were 5 teams, and we knew 2 were in the lead, and one we saw had performed not so well, and they went and took a safety. They took insurance. That left 2 teams. And to be honest, what we should have immediately done is gone and taken insurance, and that would have put pressure on another team as well to decide to take insurance, and left only the 2 top teams vulnerable. But I didn't think about that fast enough. Yeah, it was a judgment call, and I called it wrong. And I get, you know.
And do you? I mean, I just am so fascinated given your the level that you transact with organizationally and around the world. It just it's good, I think, for folks who are just getting started to hear that even someone with the credentials you have is challenged sometimes by the practical application of this work.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked as a risk manager, and I'm pretty good at calculating odds. But you know, in the social environment that was there at the time, with the activation of all the mammalians and the the lizard, the adult doesn't always function too well. Yeah.
Well, Michael, I so appreciate you being candid about that. I'm really looking forward to getting to work with you face to face as soon as I can. So really appreciate that. Hey, Joe McNerney, what? Go ahead, Michael.
It's a game, and life's a game, but you know, we don't. As long as we win more than we lose, we're ahead.
There you go. Very good. Hey, Joe, what's the toughest part of this study for you, and what do you think you still have to work on?
It's without a doubt related to scheduling, and not so much the scheduling part of scheduling, but the fulfilling on the schedule and building constraints around it and putting supports in so that I actually abide by my schedule, complete the tasks that I've got plugged in, and my business tends to have somewhat frequent interruptions and surprises and curveballs. And you know, building in time, actually scheduling in time for taking on things that aren't expected. But that's undoubtedly the biggest challenge for me.
And what do you think you still got to work on?
Well, I have to work on having you know, working with a partner, working with someone else to keep me honest on my schedule, to help take away or minimize some of the distractions, and building in a consequence that will that I am unwilling to have occur if I don't fulfill on my promises.
That's great, guys. Look, I have one more question, John. If there's any more, let me know. But this question is from one of our guests, and this is specifically for Paul Delano. You'd mentioned using personalities quite a bit with all your clients, and as an inventor / kind of leaning toward performer, do you have an actual written system to use for each client with each of the 4 personality traits, or can you give us some Can you give us some examples of how you know what that system is and how you use that?
I have not developed a written system yet for how to incorporate working with each personality type in every move and phase of the transaction. And I would imagine it would be quite extensive. And what I do is I simply keep my personality characteristics chart up in front of me all the time, and even in my car. And I simply assess and listen to where they're at, and then take what I think is the appropriate action for where they're at in that particular phase or process. And I would also say that there's so many points in the transaction. I'm not sure to what extent I would ever build it, because it's a matter of I think it's more a matter of continuing to study each transaction and each person, and to deliver what is needed at that particular point in time, whether it be a weapon of influence or whatever it might be. I think that that's more important, is just every single transaction I go through, I study who is it that I'm dealing with in that transaction, and what is it they need to move this forward to be a high value, low cost transaction.
That's great. I have two other questions that are kind of in the same vein. I think, John, the way I'd like to answer these questions related to where does personality and transactional behavior fit, I'd like to, if you'd put up the 13 steps, and then I think we'll wrap it out unless we have any more questions. I think I can answer with the 13 steps a couple of these other questions that have come in on procedure and process. And what we teach is that there's a pretty clear identifiable spine on which all transactions that are effective tend to rest, and we are attempting to do this in the 13 steps of building transactions. And I'll take you through steps 1 through 9 really quickly, but we fundamentally ask, as you heard tonight, for people to identify their aims in specific conditions of life, and we do a tremendous amount of work on conditions of life. We identify these unavoidable conditions that every human being must face if they're going to live a satisfactory life. We teach and we ask students and participants to consider their own state of mind, if they can move ambitiously, and in transacting with others, do others move ambitiously, or are they in states of despair or other states, and are you willing to prove that you're fit to reach that aim? And there's a lot of work to do in those areas before you ever get concerned with specializing in something. You've got to really look at the general knowledge, your own ambitions, and your own aims. And so you can see how once you've moved down this particular step, that specialization and specialized knowledge are all those things in that body or categorical work that's got to be done. And then as you're moving in transactions, not only must you consider your own personality, but you've got to learn how to identify and recognize other people's personality. And then there's those things, behavioral characteristics that are related to their own specific individual activities of life. So this question is, what about individual in this? Well, the individual that was born in West Texas with 5 siblings will be much different in terms of habits and practices than someone born on the East Coast, or born in New Guinea, or born in the UK with in a single parent home. And all of those conditions, nature being personality, you could say nurture being very much the environment, that all coalesce into recognizing and identifying certain characteristics that are common and those that are individual. That's where personality and transactional behavior fits, and it is really valuable to have this as an underpinning as you're moving into the marketplace to make offers that take care of very substantial breakdowns. And that's where specialist knowledge comes into play, being able to offer something that isn't common, and then moving toward the customers in that group of people, that specific ecology. So we don't teach you should chase a particular customer. We don't teach that you go out in the marketplace and find a need and fill it, because all those other steps above it come into play. Then we go to work in inventing our transactions, and then we go to work inside the invention of those transactions with weapons of influence. And this spine is not easy. You heard tonight, it's not an easy thing to learn. It's not a difficult thing to learn. It takes practice and a commitment to study. And one of the things I want to just acknowledge in our panel is the generosity and the willingness to help others. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. It's a privilege to have you in our ecology. Thank you for honoring our request to be on the panel tonight. John, I'm going to give the panelists one last chance to say anything else there is that you want to offer. And then, John, I'll let you wrap it up. So, Joe, any final thoughts?
No, Kirkland, I'm good.
All right, good. Louisa?
I'm good.
Good. Michael?
I'm fine.
All right, good. And then, Paul, any final thoughts for folks listening in, new folks, guests?
My only completing thought is that as soon as you have an appropriate level of general and specialized knowledge, you cannot move quick enough to articulate a highly specialized offer in the marketplace.
There you go, Paul. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you. There's still quite a few folks on, and I want to thank you folks for sticking around. And John, as always, thanks for all the work you and the folks at Influence Ecology do to help us all learn and to transact more powerfully. So, John, I'll turn this back to you now.
Great. For everyone, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We are going to complete the session in just a moment. Please do leave your browser open. We request your feedback about the session and helping us improve this for the future. With that, I'm going to go ahead and complete the session.